Hey, tech leaders. I'm Carol Palombini, psychologist and tech leadership coach, and this is my podcast, Tech Minds Insights. My mission is to be the change agent for tech leaders grappling with communication issues, imposter syndrome, burnout, and the complexities of the tech leadership role. In this show, I interview leaders and consultants working in the tech space to provide you with real-world insights into the challenges of leadership. If you want to be part of the show or have questions you want me to ask my guests, send me an email or a DM on LinkedIn. And today, my guest is Robert. So Dr. Robert Straw is a Swiss-US national, CEO at CEIBS Europe, based in Switzerland. He has also been a professor of finance at several universities and regularly teaches on the topics of leadership and financial leadership at corporate universities and university executive programs. He's a board member of several NGOs and on the advisor board of NASDAQ Center of Corporate Governance. So, Robert, welcome and thank you for being my guest today.
Carol, thanks so much for having me. It's a real honor. It's a real treat. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So, Robert, can you tell us a bit more about your experience with board-level executives and the Stakeholder Impact Foundation?
Well, I work with boards and just have a lot of discussions with boards about their composition, about their role, about risk, about China because of my role at SEEPS, and more about the interactions amongst the board members and how they're actually going to act and discuss the topics of the day and in the actual meeting. So more and more, I play more of an advisory role or a counselor role to the boards and how they're interacting. The Stakeholder Impact Foundation is a US-based NGO that a group of us who are in this space, in this common space about advisory boards and being on boards and funding firms, we just kept seeing that there were too many old white men on boards globally. And the research shows this. So as a sidestep, being the father of 4 daughters, I've committed to never take a board seat at a for-profit institution. That's my role, and I think many men like me should step back and give that space in that board space and that board seat to women and other underrepresented minorities on boards. The Stakeholder Impact Foundation does exactly that. It's focusing on training and on developing women and other minorities from the board perspective to be board members. So we're preparing, it's a training program, it's a 36-step training program, including an internship at a board for people who aren't on boards yet to have that experience in a protected manner. They're mentored and they're helped get into board seats going forward. That's what we do.
And it's an amazing project which I had the privilege to be invited and be part of it. So first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. It was amazing for me. And let me explain to people who are listening to us why I did that. Robert invited me to lead a workshop on conflict management in the boardroom with a focus on addressing biases. And it was a very fulfilling experience for me. And when I got there, I thought it was delivering more, but at the end, I think I got more out of this experience. It was an honor because they really engaged in the discussions, in the activities. They really wanted to talk about that openly. And it was an honor listening their struggles and understanding a bit more of the struggles of other minorities, not only women, that face decision-making roles. So thank you for this opportunity. It's amazing. The next question I have for you, it's what are the essential traits for individuals who will serve as board members in the future? You talked to me earlier about how do you vision this board member in the future. How is your vision of that?
Well, we have a whole list of what we can consider the right characteristics coming into it, of openness, of honesty, of integrity, and all those things. But I'll focus on a little bit different. I think those are fairly standard, but I'll give you a little bit of a different insight today. What we're seeing is that a lot of boards lately have been building up its Noah's Ark. And Noah's Ark means, in the Bible, it said, when the flood was coming, the big flood was coming, Noah brought the animals into the ark 2 by 2 to save them. So what I mean by this is you've got 2 cybersecurity experts, you've got 2 risk experts, you've got 2 people who are tech experts and so forth. And the risk of doing that is that those people, they may bring in a dated expertise. So by the time you get to that board level and you've been a guru in one of these topics, typically you're over the top when it comes to the learning. You have done it in the past, but your current knowledge is probably not that up to date. And the firm runs the risk of only coming to you with questions about that specific topic, say on cybersecurity or something like that. I'm encouraging firms, the best firms are actually not doing that anymore. They are bringing in real leaders who have years and decades of leadership expertise of running firms, CEO level positions or C-level positions at firms, being responsible for the business and not just a specific area of the tech side or technology or risk or something like that, but a broader leadership. So getting the experts off there. So yes, you need to come with some expertise, and that expertise is getting wider. The breadth of that is getting wider. In fact, just this week, I've had 2 discussions, one with a very senior colleague, Byron Laughlin at the NASDAQ, who's the head of the center there, as well as a very senior official from Swiss Re, the largest reinsurer in the world. And one of the things that we're talking about is that the board members don't have the composite breadth that we're looking for very, very often. They're coming in short. And in the area that we feel like they're coming in short on most is risk. And so we're talking about doing something in this space together, maybe some forums or some webinars and things like that, because even though risk is highly documented, the actual knowledge and discussion about the real risks and the operational risks at the board level are too low.
Wow, really? That that amazes me, because I thought that was only in the tech leadership space that they had this risk aversion or aversion to speaking about and actually assessing those risks. On the tech leadership level and executive level, I believe that what's missing for them to get into this new board vision of a board membership is to let go of the expert action logic.
Yes.
This kind of mindset like traps you into being this guru that you mentioned. For those who don't know, the expert action logic is one of the stages of vertical development. So you have to outgrow this if you want to have this more strategic vision of a board. And it's essential for building up and developing organizational awareness. And for those who don't know, Robert here is also a very keen lover of emotional intelligence framework. Organizational awareness is a social competency within the emotional intelligence framework. And it's the ability to understand the dynamics of an organization and its culture. Those people who are good at organizational awareness can spot personal networks in the company, find the right person for decisions, build coalitions. And this is something that I feel tech leaders are in lack of. So they usually have this power, this vision of earning power through merit. So I'm going to be good at what I do. So I'm going to get the promotion, get the opportunities, and be heard because I am this guru. So this has I see two major problems with this. One is the anxiety level that this raises and the burnout possibility of tech leaders, because they feel a lot of pressure to be at the same time executive, strategist, and also expert. And the other side is a short-sighted vision of what the board needs from you and what you can actually deliver, which is much more than your expertise. Your business acumen, your risk perspective should be put on the table. What do you think about that, Robert?
I like this mentality of the expert logic action being left behind. That's kind of what I was referring to, that, you might have been an expert in an area for years and years and years, but at the board level, it's so much broader. there's this idea called the Peter principle. You know, you get to a certain level in an organization and you peter out in a way because you don't have what it takes and the breadth to get to the next level. So they might put you at that next level and you fail because it's too broad often and you're overcome by by the nature of the job. And so you see a lot of people going to that last step and stepping too far. So a board membership is like that as well. It's not for everyone. You know, I see people, experts left and right around the world who are, going to these board programs and thinking I've got what it takes to be a board member and that looks good and I'm going to have a cushy life. A board membership, to really be a board member, requires an amazing amount of resilience. It's a whole lot of hard work to go through all the documentation to prepare. We're seeing board members not prepare for meetings. They're just not preparing. They're overwhelmed with the 800 pages that they have to prepare. And so it requires a real discipline, a real diligence, and now we're coming to it, a real level of discussion at the board level about what's going on. Because very often when I'm reading through board documentation, I have no idea what they're talking about. And that's most board members. It's some topic, I don't get it. I've got more technical questions than anything else. It's not been prepared in a way that I can read it. I need to have expert opinions help me prepare for the board meeting, or I need to ask the other experts in that board meeting. So this resonates a lot with me. A board membership, also because of the fiduciary responsibility for the firm, it's not for everyone. It's tough work. And I like what you said about the expert logic. It resonates a lot with me.
I do think you find that in other levels of executive, or is it more of a tech people person, of the technical side?
No, we see it in the finance world too, that the finance expert, we talked about this before, Carol, that often people when they're in these board meetings, there's a lot of egos in there. There's a lot of very of influence and power and things like that. And the best board member leaves his power, influence, and ego at the door and does not bring that in with them.
They come in with this reminds me of this theory, the vertical development theory, that puts the expert actual logic within one of the possibilities. It's like that Russian doll where you have all these mindsets you build up to. So if you are on the expert logic, you cannot see the bigger picture, the strategic picture, the big vision of sharing power. So one of the lines of this development framework is the line of power and agency. When you are on the expert mindset, you think that your power is merit, quality. So you should be heard because you're the authority on that. I had CTOs coming up to me as a coach with this complaint. He thought that he should be heard by the board or any other C-level executive just because he's the one who knows more about that. Right. So this be earned in his view. So he needs to grow his mindset into this strategic view where sees power as shared, as the more you have the others' input, the more you have you put the agency on the group, the more you're going to grow into that role, the more you're going to get your message across.
I love this, but there's a challenge. So the challenge is that the boards aren't meeting often enough because the board members are probably overcommitted. I have a colleague who's on 7 different major boards, and I think that's about 5 too many, actually. They're doing it for all, this person has had amazing success at being at C-level. You probably know this person even. That's how known they are. And so they're jumping from board meeting to board meeting, plane to plane around the world. They can't prepare. The board meeting itself is taking place not often enough, and they're cramming it filled with too many topics. And if you have a board meeting, a 3-hour board meeting or a half-day board meeting with 20 topics, how can you cover that logically? How can you cover that in depth? So all of us get frustrated. I come in with a finance expertise or maybe something about China, and your CTO comes in with the tech. We're not getting to any of these topics that get addressed. We don't have enough time to actually get there. So there's a frustration. So to the board chairs and the secretaries, I say, meet more often and meet shorter with fewer items on that agenda so that we really can have a deeper discussion amongst ourselves and bringing the experts into that, accordingly for that specific topic.
Yeah, is it about having a discussion and making decision, or is it about the status report? Because if you have that many things, it's impossible to have real discussion. And I think I am a believer in communication. I think the
Yeah,
better you communicate, the better you make decisions. So if you
absolutely.
are a board and you're not a single individual making decisions, you should be listening to all their inputs and making this a group decision, right?
Yes, and then we get into indirectly, you just hinted at something. The board is the role of the board is to give strategic guidance to the firm, to the C-level executives who are these gurus, right? The board's role is not to be a shadow C-suite group of executives who are, the shadow CFO, the shadow CTO, the shadow CEO, et cetera. That's not the idea. The idea is that it's an external body comprised of somewhat of those people who are often non-voting, the executive members, where we do have a dialogue about certain issues at a strategic level, not the tactical or even goal level of the firm. And I'm seeing that boards are risking becoming shadow C-suites of firms. And I say, step back a little bit further up and not get into all of the technical details, whatever it happens to be, and focus on the big picture. Where do we want to go? The direction of the ship, rather than the specific degree of the goal, right?
Yes, reminds me of how important it is for you to make an identity shift. Because once you were the guru and you were super satisfied with that, your ego is satisfied, everyone praises you for being this. And then so what you mean is when you change to a board member role, you have to change the identity. You have to let go of this guru position, and you have to be open to a new role, to a new mission. One thing I work a lot with my clients are mission statements, like purpose statements. And I feel that's one of the most powerful things I do in coaching them is actually writing this down and make it crystal clear what your purpose is, what you want to achieve with that, how you're going to benefit those around you. So it's a stakeholder center proposal. It's not what only you want to achieve, but how you want, what the legacy that you want to give, what you want people to see you as. And if you don't make this shift, then you're going to have this shadow board.
Right. And two ideas that I've been discussing with a couple of people lately. One is responsible leadership, which automatically pulls you to a higher level. And the other is a servant leadership. And a servant leadership is not a dictatorial leadership. A servant leadership is serving the firm. And it's characterized much more heavily by listening. When I'm talking to a person who's thinking about being a board member, I'm actually paying attention. Like we're interviewing right now for a board seat right now for an organization, and I'm interviewing some of the candidates, and I'm really paying first attention to, can they listen? They're fulfilling, obviously, on the CV. When we look through the CVs, these people are amazing. Absolutely, they've done this and they've done that, and wow. Sorry, but can they listen? Can they sit there and be quiet and listen and absorb and reflect about what other people are saying? And often I'm seeing, no. This is not a listener. This is someone who wants to come and believes that they have a voice to give the other members rather than a listening position. And that's a big character trait that's often missing. And that's that flip about identity a little bit. Maybe I was the speaker in my expert role, and now when I get into this really the senior of senior positions, I have to be a much better listener.
Yes, and even at C-level positions, you don't even have to get to the board. You should
Sure.
an amazing listener as a C-level executive, because you're not the expert anymore. You cannot be, especially in tech space.
Right.
Things are moving so fast that by the time you actually want to become an expert in a technology, it's already gone. There's something else out there that you should be knowing about. While we were speaking about these people that don't want to listen in the boardroom, I was thinking about intention. Do they craft an intention before? So before I get into any meeting, I think, what's my intention here? So what do I want these people to think about me? What do I want to be the outcome of this? Once I was coaching an executive, and he had a very big request to make to the CEO. He was a CTO, and he wanted to let go, to automate part of the process. And this would kind of mess with the company, because people would have to rearrange themselves differently after he did that. He had an amazing talk with the CEO. The CEO agreed with him. They had like a brainstorm. And so at the end, I asked how it was. He thought it was amazing. And I said, okay, so is he going to back you up? Is he going to send an email backing your idea? Oh, I forgot to ask that. What was your intention? You have to have a clear intention. What do I want to get out? What action I want them to take, or how do I want to make them feel? So if you don't have these two answers in your head, you will be rambling about probably something defensive in your head, because you think you have to defend something, an idea or your role or your department, and you're missing out on an opportunity of actually getting support.
When we talk about mindset and intention, there's a couple of things that come to mind. First is, it's this group of people, as well as the C-suite together, they set the tone in the organizational culture. About 85% of the organizational culture is set by this group of people, the board and the C-suite, and maybe the C-suite's direct reports. So my responsibility, if I'm in that group of people, is to lead by example. Because my mindset and my culture and how I come into it is that organizational culture. It affects the well-being. It's almost a chicken and egg thing, right? It affects the well-being of my group on the board or at the C-suite, streaming out into the firm, which actually has a direct impact and correlation and causality on engagement at the firm, which has a direct impact, correlation, and causality on performance. So it's how I come into the game sets that tone for the entire business.
You're right. You're right. It's a cascade effect.
Right, exactly.
Yes, and that takes me to my next question for you. So what do board members expect from CTOs or tech leaders, chief of security, of cybersecurity, and tech leader at the C level? What do boards expect from them?
Boards expect them to be reflective, and not to come in with, here's my answer, but here are my questions. And here, tell me the board wants to know, what do you don't know? Not what do you know? What are the areas, the white areas of risk around these topics of technology, or where things are going with the business that we don't know? What we do know and what we're doing and what we're working on, processes and products and things like that, that's all great. And we want to impress the board with those things. But maybe we should go in and say, that part we're really good with, but these areas I'm really challenged with. And I need expertise coming in on this, but no one wants to admit that they don't have all the answers. But in reality, none of us do. When I looked at recently, Satya Nadella was at the WEF, and he was being interviewed by Klaus Schwab, the founder of the WEF, about his 32 years at Microsoft. And he was talking about the PC revolution. He was talking about the cell phone revolution. He was talking about the internet. And now he said the last revolution that's taking place during his lifetime at the firm, working in Microsoft, is this AI and quantum computing revolution. And he said, we're only barely starting this. And the story I'm telling you is about this. He said, we don't know what it's going to bring. We don't know. That's what we're trying to discover. The part we know, we don't need to talk about. We need to talk about what we don't know. And I thought that mentality is why Microsoft's such an amazing company, because at the very, very top, there's somebody who's curious, who admits not to having all the answers, and who can listen. And if he does that really in I'll call it real life and not just being in an interview, That's pretty cool.
Well, I read his book, Satya Nadella's book,
Yeah.
and the whole book talks about empathy
Yeah.
from the beginning,
Right. Yeah.
and it's about being an empathetic leader. And he's a great example because he's an introvert
Yeah.
that had to come after extroverted people had to do did that business, that show presentations, and he was an introvert, and he
Yeah.
brought his own character, his own way of being. He didn't have to become someone else to be a good communicator, and he is I think is a good example of this mindset growth in leadership.
Yeah.
Not knowing the answers and sitting in discomfort is something you have to grow into. And I think that's especially challenging for tech people because they think that they have to know the answers even more than anyone else. They're technical, there's always a right and wrong. And if you do not embrace complexity as part of life, if you do not embrace uncertainty as part of your life, you cannot deal with that in a strategic level.
I told someone the other day, be more like Taylor, be a Swiftie. So there's an interview with Stephen Colbert, the talk show host, talking about him meeting Taylor Swift together with his 14-year-old daughter, who idolizes, like millions of people do, Taylor Swift. And regardless of what you think about her music and her style and all that, one thing that she has is her ability to put herself in the shoes of those 96,000 people in whatever stadium she happens to be in. And she makes people feel belonged, like they have a sense of belonging, of identity, of being loved. So with Stephen Colbert, he presented his daughter to Taylor Swift, and of course the 14-year-old daughter was just about wetting her pants. She was so nervous and excited, and Taylor's first words were, "Oh my goodness, aren't you beautiful? Look at that amazing dress." And that just says so much. It wasn't about Taylor. It was about the 14-year-old. And that's how we have to be running our businesses. It's not about us. It's about everybody else. It's about the clients. It's about our stakeholders. It's about all the thousands of people that work for us in our teams. It's not about me. Take the vision, take the view off of, oh, what about me? And look up and out to everyone else.
Being a server provider, always thinking about how can you provide your service in your unique way, in your own style, respecting who you are, and finding the best way to deliver that, but having this perspective, stakeholder perspective. You know, if you ask CTOs or C-level executives in the tech space to answer these simple questions, what does each stakeholder expect from you in one sentence? Like from in one sentence for each one. They should know this clearly. They don't. They never actually get to this conversation to understand what people expect from them.
I want to come back to something you asked about what do board members and other C-level executives expect from the CTO's patients. So very often the CTOs are knowledgeable in a way that is about the technology and processes that no one else in the room has this knowledge. And there can be either a real or a real arrogance about them that, oh, my colleagues are so dumb and I'm so smart, or I'm just impatient and I'm impatient and don't want to explain it, or I don't know how to explain it because I'm not trained to be a great communicator. So one, be patient. Two, know that the other people in the room have no clue about some of the topics that you're talking about. Maybe they are somewhat, they say, you know, I don't want to ask you a dumb question. It might be a dumb question. There are no dumb questions, only poor ways of responding to them. So the CTO has a responsibility, a burden that she knows how to communicate to other to the board members not in a condescending way, but in a way that encourages them and curiosity to grow their curiosity about technology. You know, again, this curve, this exponential curve of technology, it's growing so fast. It's very, very hard for even the CTOs and the tech people to keep up with it, much less the rest. So there's a burden, an added burden for the CTO and others similar to be able to explain this in what I call like being able to explain to your grandmother what this technology does, what it doesn't do, how it works, and what are the challenges and risks of implementing or not in our firm.
Those are perfect topics. If they just focus on answering these topics that you just gave them, it's going to be an amazing thing. So they have to prepare. As you before, they're not preparing for that. They're not preparing their communication. It's like they're not understanding that people don't understand them. They think that is pointless. They should just trust them because they are knowledgeable. And that's not going to happen. A board member is not going to trust you just because.
Yes. So little litmus test for the techies out there. Can you, in 4 or 5 simple sentences, explain what AI is, what the benefits of AI are, what the challenges of AI are for your firm and for the board on your firm? You should be able to do that as an elevator pitch when you get in an elevator in the morning and a board member says, I've got a question. I don't know about this AI. Can you help me? And that you are empathetic enough to say, I'd love to help. I'd love to. I also had to figure out what this was, right? So they might be a couple steps ahead. You might be a couple steps ahead in your knowledge, but give that knowledge in a soft way, because we definitely don't have that knowledge, meaning the non-techies in the room.
So I'm in love with this conversation. So we're getting to the end, unfortunately. Luckily, I can talk to you anytime. And can you leave a last recommendation? You talked about the WEF had interview with Satya Nadella. Could you just say, why do you recommend this interview for leaders?
Because it looked past and looking what can we learn from the past about the future. It was looking where we're going to be in 2054 somewhat. He admitted, the fact that no one has a crystal ball. He guesstimates or estimates that the benefits of AI and quantum computing combined are going to be much, much, much faster benefits and therefore challenges to overcome in 5 or 6 years. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy stuff right there, right? We went from a cell phone to a smartphone. We had about 12 years, right? That's quite a longer stint there. Okay.
Thank
it's
you.
great. These types of things are also just inspiring to hear the style of communication from a absolute global leader. In fact, Schwab said about him, you probably are the most important tech leader in the world. Wow. And that's a responsibility, not just an honor. You might go home and saying, wow, Schwab called me the most important tech leader in the world, but I'm the most important tech leader in the world. There's another tone to that of the responsibility and the burden that you have for the society, right?
Wow, thank you. I'm going to hear that because I'm going to add this interview to my list because I love him. I read his book and I think it's super worth it to hear him every time he speaks. So we got to the end. I want to thank you, Robert, for being my guest today, for all these amazing insights that you give me. Thank you very much.
Carol, thanks so much for asking me, having me on. Look forward to speak with you soon.
If you found this conversation interesting, please consider sharing it. If you're feeling stuck in your leadership career or want to improve leadership skills, book a chat and let's talk. And I'll see you on the next episode of Tech Minds Insights.